Good morning, everyone. We're going to give it a few more minutes here, just as we wait for everyone to get logged in and up and running. So bear with us for just another moment or two, and then we will get things started this morning. All right. Well, good morning. Thank you for joining us today for our virtual education series. We have a great turnout this morning. It looks like we might still have a few people hopping on here and there, but we're going to go ahead and get started because we have a lot to talk about this morning. And I want to make sure that we really have a good amount of time to spend with each of our three panelists. My name is Carrie Clemens. I am part of the team here at United Way of Greater Stark County, and I have the privilege of facilitating today's conversation. Today's discussion is titled Strong Neighborhoods, Strong Families, and we have three phenomenal guests with us today who are going to share a little bit more insight about their community work. But before we meet them, let's take a few steps back and give you just a little bit of history. Back in 2020, United Way, in partnership with Stark Community Foundation and the Center for Community Solutions, released a community report titled Protecting Stark's Future, a call to coordinated child poverty strategies. Many of you may be familiar with the work that Strengthening Stark has done in our community and the fact that several years ago, facts emerged that Stark County was becoming older, smaller, and poorer. And as conversations around how to strengthen Stark County took place, it became apparent that every single issue of concern for our community was related to poverty in some way. And especially alarming were the child poverty rates. As such, Protecting Stark's Future was commissioned, and it served as a call to everyone in the community to raise awareness on the issue and challenge us to take a deeper look at how we address poverty and how services are provided. We'll link the original report in just a moment should anybody be interested in accessing it. I do want to point out that if you look at the report, you will see some differences in the numbers and statistics that we'll be talking about today. So the report did come out 2 years ago, and just recently new data was put out and updated. So we'll be using the newest numbers in today's discussion. But overall, the concepts and the recommendations of the report remain the same. So here's a little bit of a glimpse into poverty in Stark County. Nearly 1 in 5 children live in poverty. And what I think is especially important to highlight here is that about 80% of them live in families that are headed by a single parent, and most often that is a female head of household. So that is really important because as we start to look at the numbers for poverty and dig down deeper into understanding that, we know that there are racial and gender disparities that come into play that lead to bigger income gaps. Also, Canton is currently ranked 4th for the highest child poverty rate in the U.S. Now, this is for cities with a population over 65,000, and this is a change from the original study. So if you look at the original study from 2020, we were tied for 2nd place. So while this is an improvement, we do need to step back and look at this and understand why did this change. And so this is really an instance where COVID helped us. So as we all know, there's been a tremendous number of COVID benefits out in the community, from emergency assistance type resources to childcare benefits to stimulus checks. And so those did succeed in helping to improve things. But now, with where we're currently at, as we see those benefits stop and start to go away, the assumption is that we will continue to see high numbers in this area. And then also, to put this in perspective, while Canton is ranked 4th, the 3 cities that are above us are Gary, Indiana, Youngstown, Ohio, and Flint, Michigan. But I do want to emphasize here that childhood poverty in Stark County is not just a Canton City issue. Nearly 50% of the children who live in poverty reside outside of Canton City. So the key takeaway here is that the younger you are in Stark County, as well as across Ohio, the more likely you are to live in poverty. And so we know that poor children come from poor families, and they often live in struggling neighborhoods. Laura, can you go? Thank you. The social, economic, and environmental factors where a child lives have been shown to have lifelong health impacts, and they can make future economic mobility more difficult. So we know that to break the cycle of poverty, we need to focus on the family as a whole. And we must meet immediate needs while also working to increase the earnings of families to truly make a difference. So in the Protecting Stark Future report, there was a list of recommendations for what is needed to start to make a change and move the needle on childhood poverty. And I'm not going to go through all of those recommendations today. I'm just going to highlight a few of the key ones. So again, we must focus on the family as a whole. And here's why this is so important. Children who experience poverty have more behavioral and social problems. They have more health issues. They tend to have lower academic achievement. And we know that children who come from low-income families are far more likely to enter kindergarten behind. And that for those kids who are off track in kindergarten, they are more likely to be off track in 3rd grade and to remain off track throughout their lives. And that impact continues into adulthood. Children who come from poverty are more likely to have chronic disease. They're more likely to be involved in a violent crime, and they are more likely to earn less income over their lifetime. So at the end of the day, we can throw all the resources we have at children, but if they go home to an unstable life that's often pure chaos, they are going to have trouble succeeding. So we have to serve that family as a whole by providing resources, support, and really throwing everything we have at them to help create long-lasting change. And we must meet the families where they are at. So these individuals have barrier after barrier up against them, and we can't expect them to come to us and to find the resources. We have to go right into the neighborhood to serve and support them. And we must do this all through collaborative efforts with everyone working towards a common goal. Today's panelists are doing just that. They each share a vision for a better community. They are driving change, and they are creating hope. So let's meet these 3 incredible individuals now. First, let's start with Angela Perisic. Angela is the new president and CEO at United Way of Greater Stark County, but even though she's in a new role, she's no stranger to the organization, having served United Way in the Stark County community for 25 years. Angela, tell us a little bit more about United Way. We touched on some of the highlights from Protecting Stark's Future, many which cross over directly into United Way's work. So can you share a little bit more with the audience about United Way's mission and the parallels to the Protecting Stark report?
Sure. So 2022 marks United Way of Greater Stark County's 100th anniversary in the community. So we've been serving the community for a long time, and our focus has always been about building a better community, a more equitable community, where every person has the potential for a healthier life, strong education, and more financial stability. And so although we've been doing that in some capacity for 100 years, today, no doubt, the challenges of families look a little different than they did 100 years ago. Certainly, the needs are much more complex. And so when you think about that complexity, you have to dig down a little bit deeper and think about how you're delivering those services. And certainly everything that you touched on, Carrie, earlier with regards to the report and the statistics, those are things that we are looking at as we determine how we are delivering services in the future. I mean, right now, when you look, our services, we fund depth and breadth of services throughout the community that touch thousands and thousands of people each and every day. And no doubt many of these families that we're talking about when we talk about neighborhoods and some of the hardest hit by poverty. But as we can see, we probably need to get even more focused in some of these areas to make more traction and trying to address the things that we're seeing.
Thank you, Angela. We also have Miss Betty Smith from Enrichment. Miss Betty, can you briefly tell us a little bit more about Enrichment's mission and the work that you do in the community?
Yes, thank you so much, Carrie. We are celebrating 10 years this year. I co-founded Enrichment in 2012, and we have a mission to provide anything really in the fine arts that the youth needs, such as art, dance, choir. We have theater. Our most popular class now is cooking. We have garden. We have our drum line. A lot of people know us because of our drum line. We have drumline and frontline dancers. And we also have a leadership class now that's been in existence for a little bit over a year. So those are the things that we do at Enrichment. We are much more than music. We're all about the children. And we can talk a little bit about that later.
Yes, we will. Thank you.
Okay.
And last but certainly not least, we have Pastor Don Ackerman from United Crossroads Methodist Church, who leads the Canton for All People initiative. Don, let's have you give a little bit of an overview of your work in Canton for All People.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, Canton for All People set up a simple mission to improve the quality of life for the residents in our core neighborhoods downtown. When we talk core neighborhoods, we're talking about the northwest end, the southwest end, southeast, and then the northeast end. And with primarily our focus these days is improving the quality of life in the Greater Shore neighborhood, because it's where we felt, after looking at the data, where we saw the most need and the most hurt on any number of statistics. And so we set 5 objectives to improve public safety, improve public health, provide affordable housing to the neighborhood, improve education, and break cycles of poverty. We do a number of things underneath those objectives, but that's Canton for All People.
Great. So as we can see, these are 3 incredibly diverse organizations. We have one for celebrating 10 years, one celebrating 100 years. But the one thing that they really all have in common is the work currently being done out in the community, and especially with a focus in the General Shore area of Canton. So I really want to talk about that specifically today because, as we mentioned, Protecting Stark's Future, that report called on us to think about how we deliver services and how we locate ourselves right in the communities where we're serving them, and to be able to listen to residents and what they need. So we're gonna delve into that a little bit further. I do want to remind the audience that at any time you may submit a question in the Q&A box. We are allowing time at the end where we'll be able to run through those questions and answer as many of those that we can for you. So that Q&A box is right at the bottom of your screen. feel free to jump on there and pop in a question anytime something pops in your head. So Don, I'm going to start with you this morning. As you just mentioned, Canton for All People is certainly a leader in the movement for the Shorb neighborhood. And again, you've immersed yourself into the downtown Canton community. It's not just Shorb, but you're also serving Southeast, Northeast Canton, but a lot of focus currently being given to Shorb. So let's talk a little bit about that. First, in case anybody's not aware that's listening today, can you define, when we say the greater Shorb neighborhood, what we mean by that?
Sure. I mean, our Canton for All People set up to focus on the Shorb neighborhood south of 12th Street, over to Monument Park, if you're familiar where that's at, over by I-77, West Tusk on the southern boundary, and McKinley on the eastern boundary. However, we realize that when we provide services, right, 44703 goes almost all the way up to 20th Street. And it's a much, much larger area, and Shorb runs north and south through there. So it's hard to define a neighborhood just by streets and boundaries, as we do work at Gibbs Elementary because the kids from Shorb go there. And so, but that's the primary focus area for Canton for All People.
Thank you. I think that's a really key point. So while there is a defined neighborhood that we're focused in, obviously services are happening on the outskirts of that. The neighborhood schools are key to how services are able to be put out into the community for children and families. So it does always trickle over, and the ultimate goal being about serving kids and families is what we're all working towards. So Don, tell us why the revitalization work in Shorb is so important, and why bringing those services right into the neighborhood to residents is something that you feel so passionate about.
Sure. The statistics for Shorb can be sobering when we look at them, but they do tend to get folks' attention to realize that median income in the neighborhood's around $25,000. If you're an African-American family, it's only $17,000 a year. The age group that lives in poverty the most in this neighborhood are children under 6. We've seen an increase since COVID of children under 6 being born into poverty in the neighborhood. The other startling statistic that gets on people's minds, especially these past few weeks as we've had some challenges in the neighborhood, is Canton has 6 shooting hotspots for its city, 2 of which are south of 12th Street and in the greater Shorb neighborhood. And these are persistent threats against the neighborhood that tend to come as from lack of divestment in our communities. And while in Canton we've seen that for a few of our neighborhoods, the symptoms of that kind of divestment seem to be most acutely felt on our northwest end. And so meeting those needs where people are hurting the most is certainly why I think we were drawn to the area to try to do something about it.
Thank you. Yeah, you and I've been part of multiple conversations with you, I feel, over the past year and a half. And I will say, I always leave our conversations a little heartbroken in some ways after hearing some of the statistics, but then also incredibly hopeful because I know how invested you are in this community, in this neighborhood, and to see others that are rallying around Canton for All People to join that, it is incredibly hopeful for me about our community. So Angela, I'm going to flip over to you because I think this is the perfect segue here after hearing some of those statistics Don just shared about the disinvestment in this community. And you mentioned this in your introduction that, you know, after 100 years of serving the community, it's time for us to look at, as the United Way, how we provide those services and maybe roll those out a little bit differently. So with United Way's centennial this year, a new initiative being launched, which is currently still in the very early stages of design and implementation, is Strong Neighborhoods, Strong Families. So how about you talk a little bit more about that initiative and what that could and may look like as it progresses?
Absolutely. So as I said in my opening comments that, you know, we fund a lot of programs that already benefit the families in Shorb, and we'll continue to do that. But in addition to that, looking at what more can we do? And so again, taking from the suggestions from the Strengthening Stark's Future report is really delivering services on a neighborhood level. And, we, again, in conversations with Dawn, look at the Shorb neighborhood. And so when we think about that, probably many of us associate, where you go to school as being your neighborhood. The school tends to be a little bit of the heart of the community. You've got families naturally coming in and out of there. So we've actually been in early discussions with Gibbs Elementary, as Dawn alluded to. The kids that live in the Shorb neighborhood attend Gibbs Elementary. And in conversations with the principal there, certainly the needs are great. And so we think that could be a natural partnership. What's really important to us is that, there's a big plan for Shorb and the housing renovation and all of that great stuff. United Way, we don't see ourselves being part of all of those pieces. We're going to certainly stick with what our strength is and what we're really good at, and that's wrapping those services around those families. It's equally as important that we focus on the parents as well as the students. So that's our plan moving forward, in a general sense as we think about Shorb.
Fantastic. Thank you. So Miss Betty, we're going to come over to you because you made a comment in your introduction that enrichment is much more than just music classes. And we all know that. And I think we could say that really for any nonprofit out in the community, there's always so much more there than maybe on the surface. So you are working with these youth who are coming from the neighborhood. As we've heard, there are immense challenges around them that they face in their home lives and in the community. So talk to us a little bit more, when those kids come to you for classes, whatever it may be, some of the weight that they're carrying on their shoulders and, challenges that you see that your youth and families struggle with.
Yes, Carrie, our children are carrying too much on their little shoulders. There's always the thing of food, which, we'll talk about, and we can talk about hunger is an issue. The kids come to me hungry all the time. They come in the door hungry, like on Saturdays, they come as early as 9 and they're there all day. So we do make sure that there's some lunch for them to eat, but I try to have a snack or something for them when they walk in the door. And then, like I said earlier, our cooking class is very popular. It's popular because they do want to cook, but because they can eat. And then they want to take food home with them when they cook. It's become very expensive to have this program, but it's very vital. So I'll figure out a way that we can continue it, and we'll continue to grow. Our summer numbers for camp are already up. We have like 80 registered in camp. That doesn't even include the 50-some kids that are coming to the program now. So you can imagine we're going to have a wild summer, a great summer though. The children come, and one thing that I like to do is get more involved with the children and to get to know their parents. We have to work with our families. It's so important that we understand their struggles. I don't think there's a bad parent. I think the parents just need support and need to know that they have the support that is so necessary for them to keep their children and keep their children together. TLC, everybody needs it, and our children need more of that. I remember coming up, everything goes around in a circle. I was born in 1940, and the things we're talking about now, we talked about then, food and families and poverty. When is it how do we make a difference? And we are making changes, but it seems like we just need to be doing a little bit more, because I'm backflashing to, wow, this is what happened when I was growing up. So I always try to give the children hope. Some of the children just want to know, how do I stay alive for tomorrow? Because as Pastor Don said, there's shootings. One kid told me his home got shot up. He wanted me to go in the house to see the mirror in his bedroom where the shots came through. They lived like this. He had a cousin that just died from a gunshot wound. So the children are facing all of these challenges, and we just have to let them know that we are here for them. We're here to support them, to give them the love and affection that they need. And everybody in every community organization, we just need to bind together a little bit more and support one another, because all the children belong to us, and it does take a village. It definitely takes that village to make things work.
It truly does. And I think, to me, that is, as we do these virtual panels, and our intent is to bring more awareness to the issue and have these open conversations where we can all say, we are a village, and how can we help serve this community more, and all the communities of Stark County. Don, you shared some sobering statistics earlier. We know, that when we look at Shorb, 20% of adults don't have a high school diploma. You said they have one of the highest violent crime rates in Stark County. People are going to hear this. They're going to see these statistics. And I know you know this. I know you've heard this before. They're going to say that this is hopeless and that maybe this community is too far gone. What do you say to people when they say that?
Great question. And I do get it all the time. And that is more important. I've heard you highlight my investment in the community, or Canton for All People. More important than ours is the people that already live there. And when you talk to residents in the greater Shorb area on a literal survey, 9 out of 10 say they want to stay there and they love their neighborhood for any number of reasons. They can walk to the park, they can walk to downtown, and that there's a lot of great things to do in the neighborhood that are fairly close to the neighborhood, and that these folks have already been invested in their neighborhood long before social services had thought it was going to be cool to involve in the neighborhood, and they're the greatest asset that our city has. Our children in these neighborhoods, when we go, we have a program that we operate in public parks throughout Canton, Ohio, where we just show up and have supervised play for kids who aren't registered in with anything, so kids can just come up and play. And kids say, a lot of things when they're involved in those programs. Kids just kind of show up and play, and these kids have hopes and dreams for their neighborhoods too. And it's the same thing everybody wants in their neighborhood. It's the same thing Miss Betty's bringing up here. People want good, safe, stable housing. So Canton for All People, we're just here to provide the foundation for families and people to thrive in their neighborhoods. That is not a difficult concept. As if we can look at study and statistics after statistics, but at the end of the day, if we lay safe foundations, I see Eric Freeman coming in there, who lives in the neighborhood, talking about public art. We all want beautiful spaces in our neighborhood, and how we do that. While it's simple, it's also not simplistic, and there's a lot of challenges to work through. But I will also say to those folks who say that, the greater Shorb area is not worth investing in, then show me a time when we've made a significant investment in these neighborhoods where you've tried. Because you ask folks in the neighborhood, or anybody who's lived downtown for any number of years, and they'll tell you that no one's really tried on a significant level for neighborhood revitalization in this area. And so the same as folks want to say that there's no hope in the neighborhood. Well, we have not tried to the level that our neighboring communities have, and for our neighborhoods. And so now it's time for Canton, Ohio and Stark County to try.
Very well said. Thank you, Don. It's so true what you just said, and what Miss Betty highlighted as well. This is their community, and they are proud of that community. They want to live there, and they want it to be different, and they want it to be safe for their children. And so for those of us that are in a position to help support that, that is our role and responsibility as well, is to create safe places for the children in our community, and give them hope for the future. So Angela, there is a lot of, I can't even keep up with it right now. There's a lot of action happening in the chat and the Q&A box from the audience members, which we love to see. So please keep that coming. We love to see that. And I'm going to switch over to you at this point. And, from your perspective, as United Way looks at this new initiative, and we heard what Don and Miss Betty said, what do you think is needed from all of us in Stark County and the community to keep this progress moving forward and help it be successful?
Excuse me. I think most importantly, it's all of us coming together. Every organization has its strengths and the things that make it unique. We don't have to try and reinvent what we're doing, but bring what we're best at to the table, and partner. What is it? Many hands make light work. And so we've talked a lot about how challenging the circumstances might be, but no doubt when everybody comes together and does their part or what they really excel at, we can absolutely make a difference. I'm looking at a quote that's on my wall that I think about often when I think about the kids in our community. And it's a quote by James Baldwin that says, "For these are all our children. We will all profit from or pay for what they become." And so we can think about how challenging the situation is, but what concerns me the most is if we don't do anything, the loss of potential, because each one of these kids holds a vast amount of potential that they could be contributing as grown-ups to this community. And I certainly would hate to see any of that potential be lost. So it's an investment. It's us investing now for the future of our community and for these families, but ultimately we're the ones that have the most to lose if we don't come together to make this a reality.
Thank you. All right, so lots of conversation. Pastor Don, you're doing an amazing job getting responses out to everybody in the chat box for me here.
Friends on there, that's all, you see.
So I promise in just a minute.
Yeah.
In just a minute, we'll get to the chat box and we're going to bring up some of the stuff that everyone's talking about so the whole audience can hear. We'll get to that in just a second. I do want to make sure there's time for some community questions and conversation. But before we do that, we're going to do one last question. I want to go over to Miss Betty. You've been doing this for 10 years. We know that you've had incredible success with your kids and the new leadership program. Can you share with us, though, because we have talked about some very sobering things and we're still going to continue that honest conversation, but share with us maybe one story that really sticks with you of a youth or a family that you've worked with in your 10 years of doing this work at Enrichment.
I have a lot of stories, but one that really sticks out in my mind is 2 years ago, I had this young man come to me and he was really anxious, moving around a lot. We couldn't kind of contain him and he just was walking around not knowing what to do. So I said, well, we always give the kids some paper, let them draw and sketch and stuff. And I said, well, do you like to draw? He said, oh yeah, I'm pretty good. So, he sat there and he drew these buildings. I mean, I had never seen anything like it. And he did it within a matter of maybe 15 or 20 minutes. And he was very intent in what he was doing. And my goodness, I looked at it and I said, you're a little artist. And he said, I do a few things. So I said, well, may I have this piece that you just drew? And he said, yes. So I took it to an architect, a friend of mine, may he rest in peace, Rodney Meadows. And he looked at it and he said, wow, this is really good. He said, what college does he attend? I said, Rod, he's 10 years old. He said, the kid's a genius. So I introduced him to Rod and his mom, and they got him involved in an art program with at the Hartford STEAM Academy. and he has won 4 different awards.
Oh my goodness.
He's 12 now. He's just, these kids have so much talent. They just need a place where they can come and feel safe. And then he did, he just said, oh, I like to draw. He doesn't even realize the gift that he has. He does now, and so he's going to have a booth at our arts festival in July. So you all come out and buy his artwork.
I love that. That is so fantastic. And that ties in, I don't know. So not everybody can see the chat box. So we have a note here from Eric, who lives in the community and says that he would love to integrate art throughout the neighborhood. And that he's been involved trying to get different community efforts and resources together. So it looks like he's got a couple comments out here. He has a group that he's pulling together to talk about this. It's a small group of creatives, and they're going to be meeting mid-May to talk about how they could bring some public and community art into the neighborhood. So
could I chime in on that a little bit, Carrie?
Yeah,
Eric is he's our enrichment art director at Enrichment. And he is the one that pulled together the team that has that mural on our front lawn on 10th and Cleveland with Macy Gray. Yes, and Savion Glover. And Macy was just here not too long ago. And so this mural has been seen all over the world because we was on NBC in a special with American Song Contest. But Eric is in charge of that. And we're going to be partnering with the park districts to put murals in some of the parks. So,
oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's awesome.
That's fantastic. All right. Let's see. Again, if you have a question that you would like to just pose for a general conversation this morning or for one of the specific panelists, please go ahead and pop that in either the chat or the Q&A box for us. And we're going to work our way through here. So I'm just scrolling through. We have one question. Can any of you discuss efforts you are involved in or aware of to improve healthcare access, including coordinating with the local health departments and community health workers?
Yeah, I can take that one. So
Okay.
I think we have a couple of initiatives that we're working directly with. One, I should start with, probably our biggest one that was just highlighted on Channel 5 last week, is we're putting a health clinic on the southeast end of Canton. Canton for All People, in coordination with My Community Health and Stark Fresh, are bringing an 11,000 square foot facility that's going to house both fresh produce and a full-scale, a 6,000 square foot grocery store, and as well as a clinic that's going to provide OB and primary care in the neighborhood. However, right, that was something the community had been asking for a long time, and specifically because racial disparities exist in our neighborhood and our communities and where lines have been drawn. That neighborhood has been devoid of those resources for a very long time. So it was a heavy lift for any number, but it did take a big effort to get that to happen there. So we are working to bring access to healthcare to our southeast end, which is something they've not had regular access to for decades. Also, in the greater Shore area, we just conducted a health needs assessment with Altman Hospital and My Community Health as well. But we are working with our Black Nurses Association this year to bring first aid kits to families and train kids and families how to treat gunshot wounds and how to take care of what happens in between when something violent happens in your neighborhood and before when that EMS can show up, so that you can, in your neighborhood, be a source of life-saving efforts as well. That's part of our programming this summer. And we also work with the City of Canton, the Community Development Office, on lead paint testing in the greater Shore area. As you know, most homes in the neighborhood, about 80% of them were built prior to 1934 and have any number of issues with these homes. Asbestos still in the homes, lead paint still in the homes. The city has programs for these, but it's a matter of getting to the homes that have children in them, getting them tested, and getting those resources from the city to where they need to be. Because despite what you might think about the Shore neighborhood, the number one illness in the neighborhood is lower respiratory illness, likely as a result of degrading home conditions as a result of lead paint and asbestos still in the homes. That's our running theory now. But it's a matter of being in the neighborhood, getting the right homes tested, knowing where the children live, and getting those resources brought to where they can provide the biggest impact.
Thank you. We also have some comments here. So Yolanda noted it's a cultural difference here that plays huge factors. It's very much a disconnect with the community and organizations. It says if we don't talk about this, nothing will get done or change. So I think that's a very key point about listening to the residents of the community and going out to hear what they have to say. I know, Dawn, that's something that you do, and I know that's something that you feel very passionate about as well. I don't know if either one of you would like to add any comments to that about listening to the residents and really building those relationships with the individuals in the neighborhood.
Go ahead, Dawn.
Sure. I mean, just to dovetail off what I just said previously, the folks, the idea to get first aid training in the neighborhood was not ours. The idea to build and renovate housing was not ours. The idea to put, a health clinic and a grocery store clinic on the southeast end of Canton was not ours. We are simply a vehicle to provide resources in a way that neighborhoods can achieve their hopes, dreams, and aspirations, which is why half of our board lives in the neighborhood. And when we were trying to beat our heads against the wall on public safety, when neighborhood watches just kept falling apart in the Shore area, it was a child. Well, she was 16. They come to our board meeting and say, hey, what if you train me how to treat gunshot wounds? And I think the rest of the board sat there and folks in the neighborhood and said, yeah, that's a great idea. And so we're buying 250 first aid kits for homes in the neighborhood and getting the Black Nurses Association and trainers out there to do first aid training for folks. It's a sobering fact that we have to do it. However, you had people in the neighborhood saying, hey, I could save a life. We said, all right, let's help you do that.
Thank you. Angie, was there anything you wanted to add, or Miss Betty?
Go ahead, Miss Betty.
No, I was just going to say there has to be consistency. I'm very much in support of what Pastor Don is doing. I'm on his board, but I can remember starting this when I first came here in 1998, and I did it for 10 years. And what happened, it dropped off. When I came in the neighborhood, there was 450 boarded up houses and families in need of food and clothing. And I was able to get the support of the city, and we did neighborhood walks. And we got a lot of the old houses torn down. We got the neighborhood involved. The people were involved. We provided jobs for the children and the parents. So I'm really glad to see that this effort is picked up, but there was about a 10-year lag when nothing was done. So we have to be consistent. You start a good job, but then we have to have the funds and everything to keep things going. Then the neighborhoods can grow. But if you do 10 years and you stop 5 years or 10, and you have to start all over and reinvent the wheel. So be consistent, and we need to bring more of us together and to collaborate and keep the dollars flowing. We don't have nearly enough money. I guess no one does, but the arts, we really are struggling to keep programs going. But we need to talk more and to work closer together and involve the parents, and the children have a lot to say, as I think Pastor Don alluded to. The children they know what's going on. They can tell you where the drugs are, where the gangs are, and everything. And we need to listen to them.
Yes, thank you. Angie, any last words on that one?
I mean, I think that it's really as simple as we can want to help, but if you don't live someplace or you're not walking in someone's shoes, you can't know. So, I mean, we have to listen and to be guided, and then certainly help. But we can't know. We can't unless we're walking in those shoes.
We need volunteers. I think someone said, how can they help if you don't live in the neighborhood? Everybody needs volunteers. We don't have enough money to pay. I know I don't. To pay for staff for everything that we need. I mean, I could use mentors for our children. We need counselors for the children. Yes, some of our kids do have mental health issues. They do. We do find that the arts help them. We take the children that are autistic behavior problems, ADHD. Music and the arts make a difference in the lives of the children. So yeah, if you're outside, call any of us, right, Pastor Don? We always need volunteers to come and help us and assist in the things that we're trying to do to make improvement in our community.
I'm looking at Jen Warner's comment right here about it. Neighborhood organizations don't have professional grant writers. Coming from a neighborhood organization where me and Pastor Mike do most of the grant, I think we do a pretty good job. And I know this, all of us try to tie in, and when we find things, we pass it over to different organizations. But when I want to say clearly that when I talk about investment in our neighborhoods, I don't think most people realize the scale of which this investment is needed when you've divested from a neighborhood for decades. Quick statistic here. We renovate housing in the neighborhood. We renovate affordable housing. So we have a really up-to-date cost on what things cost in 2022. We're trying to build new homes, brand new homes for residents in the neighborhood at affordable rates. But affordable housing is a myth. It does not exist. Right now, the cost of a 1,550 square foot home with a slab basement, 3-bedroom, 2 garage, cost in 2022 in April 2022 dollars, $310,000 to build. $310,000 to build when your median income is $24,000 in the neighborhood. Affordable housing does not exist. And so it is, yes, we need volunteers and those kinds of things, but we also need a large level of municipal and governmental support to provide the kind of investment into neighborhoods that have been long forgotten. And the amount of investment that takes lobbying public officials. It takes voting for members at our local level, as well as our government, as state and federal levels, that realize that this is of extreme importance and that affordable housing hasn't just been a crisis now because post-COVID and with inflation, it's been a crisis for decades, and it's just getting to a tipping point and gotten to emergency levels here on a local level.
Thank you, Don. Yes, so there's been a lot of comments rolling in on the chat box. Just to sum this up for everybody, we've had questions about what can people do that live outside of this neighborhood but are in Stark County or the community. And then there's a lot of conversation happening around discussing funding. So again, we can all speak to this. Any nonprofit that you're going to talk to is going to say that they never have enough funding to do what they do. And especially, like Don just said, for something to this scale of what is needed, funding is critical to keep the project going. And to Miss Betty's point, this isn't a quick fix. This isn't something that we're just going to pop into the neighborhood, build a couple new apartment buildings or housing and pop right back out. This is a long-term investment plan that is going to take time, it's going to take money, and it's going to take people to create change. So if we could, rally people around a couple common core things. So one, funding, and major funding, to Don's point. So what's needed there is advocacy to our local government, to our state legislators about this. And we have some great resources that we can provide for individuals if you've never done any kind of advocacy work that could help point you and kind of steer you in the right direction to do that. Also, we're all very incredibly familiar with the job crisis right now, and how it's very hard to find employees, and nonprofits feel that crunch exceptionally, right now, because it's hard for us to be competitive with other industries. So volunteers are very much needed. And I think it's very common for people to think, oh, I'm going to volunteer, I'm going to go, paint something or pick up trash or landscape. But we are talking about a need for much more skilled volunteers. So people who can grant write, who can help fundraise, who can help with marketing, really help with those internal resources that are needed that will free up time for leaders of organizations like Angela and Betty and Dawn, so that they can go do advocacy and they can go do grant writing. So I think those are a couple key points, and we will send a follow-up out after we are finished here today, which we just have a few more minutes available, but we will send out an update and include links for individuals if you are interested in advocacy or volunteering, what that looks like. Let me just do a quick run through the questions here. Someone said, why does it cost $310,000 to build a home in Shorb neighborhood? And Dawn, I think you answered that in the chat. I mean, that's inflation. That's the cost of materials to build a basic house at this point.
No, I mean, housing has been unaffordable for a long time. Inflation has exacerbated the issues to the point to where, yes, lumber right now on that 1,550 square foot home was $75,000. And for those of you who think that it was only a $20,000 profit to the builder of that $310,000 for that home. But housing has been unaffordable in this country for the better part of the last 25, 30 years. And there have been a lot of folks advocating and saying, hey, we're getting to a tipping point, and then this inflation has really exacerbated the issue. For Canton, we're about 9,000 affordable housing units short. For the Shorb neighborhood alone, 75% of the renters in the neighborhood cannot afford their rents. They also have nowhere else to go. So you want to know why landlords don't keep up their places? There's no incentive to do that, because there's not a large amount of life-giving rentals where families can thrive and children can thrive in having safe and affordable places to live. We just don't have a lot of those places around here. Average price of rent in the Shorb neighborhood is $710 a month. I go back to do the math on a median income of $25,000 or $17,000 for an African-American family. The math doesn't add up. People can't afford the rent.
Thank you for that detail. Okay, so I think we have time for one more question. I'm answering one in the Q&A box, but I'm gonna put this one out there for all three of you that you can answer. And the question is, are there opportunities for students to volunteer and work on a service learning project?
Yes. We have opportunities at enrichment for students. In fact, I have some students working with me, and we have interns from several of the universities that work with us. So I welcome that.
Thank you. Ron?
Yes, we have a number of them. We have internships over the summer. We also will be opening up a number of job positions here in the coming week to help with our King Park Kids program. But if there are specific projects that we could facilitate for better improvement of the Shorb neighborhood, we're also open to having those conversations as well. I see Kristen Sedmock asked that question. Hi, Kristen, how are you? Good to see you.
And Angela.
Yeah, certainly we can always use volunteers, but then we're also able to connect volunteers to other organizations throughout the community as well, as we become aware of their needs. And we actually have a couple internship opportunities available as well over the summer.
Perfect. Okay, so we are approaching our time. So at this point, I want to thank our three panelists for joining us today and sharing and having this very engaging and open dialogue. I will say this was one of the more active webinars that we have done with the chat box going. So not only thank you to the panelists, but thank you to all of you who are participating with us today. This says a lot about you and our community as a whole of wanting to be engaged and understand the challenges that are out there and being open to having this type of dialogue and connecting. So there are a tremendous amount of comments in the chat box of individuals asking to connect after this, inviting the panelists to community meetings, and wanting to have follow-up conversations. So we're going to take all that, we'll compile it, we'll make sure that everybody that reached out is able to get connected to the panelists so that we can continue this dialogue and keep conversations conversation going with the ultimate goal of continuing to change lives and create hope for all of these children and families in our community. So thank you again to everybody for joining us today. We will be in touch with follow-up soon, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your Tuesday morning. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Bye-bye.